Up next, we are going to be talking about how people should be rethinking their notions about existence and reality. Up next, Dr. Amit Goswami on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Dr. Amit Goswami is a theoretical physicist, professor emeritus of the University of Oregon Institute for Theoretical Physics. His father was a Hindu guru in India, and his work, Dr. Goswami, brings knowledge of mystical traditions together with his love for scientific exploration. He is a pioneer of the new paradigm of science called science within consciousness. As well as being a highly sought-after international teacher and speaker, Dr. Goswami is the author of 11 books, a number of papers translated into 9 languages. He's appeared in the very popular film, What the Bleep Do We Know, and is the subject of a new documentary, The Quantum Activist. We've got a little clip of the trailer at coasttocoastam.com. Here's Dr. Amit Goswami on Coast to Coast. Hello, Doctor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good to have you with the program. Fascinating subject. It's not every day that a physicist with your background also looks at many of the topics you've looked at in your life: evolution, God, existence, reality. How did you put the two together?
Well, it just happens, George. I don't have any rational explanation of how it came to me or whether I did it or not, but creativity is a very interesting phenomenon. Every human being is capable of it if we have the right curiosity and if we inquire about it with the right creative process. So I suppose I must have done some good in the sense that I engaged with the creative process, and that's what produced all this synthesis.
I was watching yesterday a documentary on the History Channel, fine cable network, just about things going on in the universe, how stars are being formed, just the magnificence of the universe, Doctor. And it just boggles my mind at how the universe has this order to it.
Absolutely. And especially when you put in the order that the living aspects of the universe bring about. I mean, the non-living is already so full of splendor, and the living and the potential of the living, it's not even fully realized. When you think of that, then you really get overwhelmed about the intelligence of the Creator.
Now, tell me a little bit about your background in physics, how you got into physics.
Well, I was a materialist in the usual paradigmatic ideas of physics, which is based on scientific materialism. Everything is made of matter. I graduated in theoretical nuclear physics, and for 10 years, that was my life. I used to calculate stuff, properties of nuclei, and used to speculate, give talks. But at one conference, I was invited, and I gave a talk. And I remember I thought I didn't do very well, and everyone else is doing better. And I felt so jealous that jealousy energy eventually just burned me out. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I went outside. It was on Monterey Bay, and the ocean air hit my face, and the thought came from nowhere. And the thought was, why do I live this way? I obviously had a huge conflict within me building that my research life was very much separated from my regular other aspects of life. So I started integrating. That was the beginning of the new life in physics.
You've been credited for solving what is called quantum measurement paradox. Now, what is that? What does that mean?
Well, it means a very simple thing. Quantum physics says that objects are possibilities. Objects are waves of possibility, to be exact. And then when an observer looks, however, we find that nobody sees possibility. One sees actual events of experience. Objects are revealed as particles. So how does the wave become a particle? Just by observers looking. Because material interactions can produce only more possibilities. Material interactions cannot do anything but produce possibilities, bigger and bigger possibilities. So how does possibility become actuality? Just by simply the observer looking. So observer must have a non-material a This is the paradox. How can the observer have a non-material aspect? If all we are is brain, that many neurophysiologists and scientists think of ourselves, then how can ever matter interacting with matter give us other than possibility, actual events of experience. This is just the beginning of the quantum measurement, and then there are many other paradoxes that come in also.
And somewhere you have to weave in consciousness into this whole equation, don't you?
Yes, and this is where it weaves in very naturally. So we say observer's consciousness must be non-material. That's the beginning of the whole paradigm shift. When we say that, people will immediately say, well, how does consciousness interact with matter? Because they are two different things. They could not interact without exchanging a signal. And if you exchange signals, that means you are exchanging energy. But the energy of the physical universe itself is always a constant. So how can energy be lost into the world of consciousness and vice versa? So these are very legitimate criticisms, but nobody was looking at consciousness in the right way. So what happened was that I had the idea came to me that if consciousness is the ground of being, consciousness is everything there is, consciousness is everything, and matter is possibility of consciousness itself, then consciousness can choose from these webs of possibility without having to interact, because it's choosing from its own possibility. There is no need for interaction, or there is no need for exchange of signal. And this signal-less communication has been discovered. So we already know that such interactions are possible. And that's the solution then of the measurement theory, that the observer's consciousness, through a signal-less communication, chooses, and that choice makes possibility into actual events of experience.
Doesn't that rattle the mindset of most scientists and physicists?
It does. It does.
No
end.
They're so practical, you know.
I know. And to think that matter, which is so solid and so rigid sometimes, and so concrete, and matter to be made of consciousness, something that is so nebulous and so vague and so woolly. And yeah, I can see the consternation of my materialist friends, and I'm very sympathetic to their difficulties and in grasping this. But if one grasps, here is the key. Materialist science, the way we do biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, medicine, all of these fields have developed so many paradoxes and so much of anomalous data. If you look at the totality, you'll be amazed that scientists are not concerned about it. In other words, the current paradigm is breaking down, except that we are so specialized, no specialist in his or her particular little narrow field does not notice the amount of anomalous data, the amount of paradoxes that have accumulated. Only a holist or a person of generalist interest, and I am one, I suppose, can see it, and then we get alarmed that there must be an answer. And when we find the answer in terms of a science within the primacy of consciousness, we discover to our delight that all the paradoxes can be solved, all the anomalous data can be explained. And so it's wonderful news, actually. Scientists have nothing to be worried about. The old science remains as valid as ever because the new science incorporates it. But the new science opens up a huge vista, a frontier that we now can investigate.
We do on Fridays what we call a mind consciousness blast to help people who are ill, Doctor. We have, we've got millions of listeners, and I ask them on Fridays, just when they have time, to concentrate on a list of people that are on a list, and they've got their afflictions. They could have, God forbid, cancer or just about anything, or maybe even they need a job, a new job. So people concentrate on this, and it's very strange that there appears to be a lot of success with this. Someone who had a tumor, for example, is put on the list, and miraculously three weeks later, the tumor's gone. Doctors can't explain it. I'm not taking credit for it, but it's weird. These things happen.
Yeah.
How strong is consciousness?
Well, consciousness chooses from possibilities the actual event. So the trick then is that in what state of consciousness do we choose? It turns out that we choose in a non-local non-ordinary, non-local state of consciousness. What does that mean? It means that in an interconnected consciousness, I spoke of this signal-less communication. In that state of consciousness, signal-less communication can happen, and this is why it is very potent in that non-local state, because it has the capacity of choosing from all possibility, all waves of possibility, and obviously these possibilities must contain the healing possibility that you're talking about. So in that very non-local state of consciousness, we can choose the healing possibility, that particular facet of possibility that contains the healing of the person, of the diseased person. So it can be extremely potent. The whole point is that, of course, we are ordinarily, in our ordinary ego consciousness, we cannot access this non-local consciousness. If we can learn, if we can practice with a lot of patience and a lot of creativity, if we can practice how to access this non-local consciousness, the source of this quantum choice from possibilities, then we could not only heal, we could solve economic dilemmas, we could find new meaning in our lives, we could discover love in relationships. The possibilities are unlimited.
You know, in the documentary, The Quantum Activist, you talk about people should re-examine their ideas, their notions of existence and reality. What do you mean by that? Re-examine their notions of existence?
Well, we have become materialists only in the last 50 years. Actually, before materialism became so strong, which happened in the 1950s with the discovery of molecular biology, because biologists thought that the secret of life is finally at hand with the structure of DNA uncovered. But this thinking that matter is everything and there is nothing but matter, this is very new thinking. Before that, what we had was a sort of a hodgepodge philosophy called dualism, where mind and matter were both regarded as potent. René Descartes, the famous philosopher, discovered it or enunciated it, I should say. And this has been a part of Western philosophy ever since, until the 1950s, when this lost popularity because the materialists thought that matter can explain everything. In other words, mind can be explained by matter. So that's when we lost it. And because we lost it, we have to rediscover it now.
We'll be back with more, Doctor, in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Well, do you know all about the iPhone app with StreamLink? If you don't, just go up to coasttocoastam.com and read all about it. As far as StreamLink's concerned, now you can get archives several years past. That's incredible, and you just accumulate them and podcast them, store them, do whatever you want with them, but you can go back several years now to get old shows on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie with our special guest tonight, Dr. Amit Goswami. Doctor, you wrote a book called God Is Not Dead. That's pretty dramatic for a physicist.
I hope so.
Well, I like your thinking because I agree with you. There's something out there. There's some kind of divine intelligence behind this incredible magnificence in the universe, maybe other universes, and we'll get into that with you later on tonight as well. But when you say God is not dead, what do you mean?
Well, actually, the idea is absolutely wonderfully scientific and simple to verify. When we say God is not dead, of course, people get the idea that, well, religions, they are the ones who are supposed to know about God, and they fight with each other, so therefore there may not be any real definition that we can agree upon. This is not true. The first thing one notices is that all religions agree that God is a source of causation other than the material level of causation. Today we call the material level of causation upward causation, because in their picture, elementary particles are the final cause, eventual cause, and everything else is made up of elementary particles making atoms, molecules, neurons, brain, and so forth. And that's their picture. And it's only material interactions, they build everything. But spiritual traditions, religious traditions say that no, on top of this, there is another source of causation, and that's the source they call God. So it's not that it's a woolly idea. It's really about, is there only material cause in the world, or is there any other cause? So what does this cause represent, or what does this cause? Is there a signature of this cause? Both of these things become clear in quantum physics, because in quantum physics we need a source for choosing, because quantum physics says every object is possibility. So there has to be a non-material entity that chooses the actual event from the facets of these possibilities. So we need a causation, a source of causation, and this is how this source of causation works, by choosing from the possibilities that is offered to it by material interactions. So we have a clear idea of how this causation works. And the next question is there a signature of the causation? And we find, to absolute surprise, that there are absolutely wonderful and unquestionable signature which can never be simulated by material interactions. One of these signatures I was talking about earlier, called non-locality, signal-less communication. All material interactions must occur via signals. Signals must carry material interactions. Otherwise,
and these signals are everywhere, aren't they?
Signals are everywhere. So if you look at space-time universe, there is no way that one can communicate without any signals. But it just so happens that in quantum physics, there is this non-locality, there is signal-less communication. We have discovered it experimentally in 1982, and since then, many other experiments, including human subjects, have shown the ability of signal-less communication without exchanging signals. So how is it taking place? The idea is that consciousness is mediating this kind of interactions, and through downward causation. This new source of causation, which we call downward causation, to contrast it with upward causation. This causation not only exists, it has a definite theory, namely it is the quantum choice, and it has definite verification by virtue of its unique signature. One of these signatures is non-locality, signal-less communication.
Are you a believer in the Big Bang Theory? And if you are, what the heck is it?
Good way of putting it. Well, Big Bang Theory is something that one can believe in because it is also based on a good theory, and it is also based on good data. We have data which suggests, namely cosmic microwave radiation background that pervades the whole universe. This background radiation comes to us from all directions. And that could happen only if, and it's cooled off just the right amount since the universe exploded in a big bang. So all these things agree with the basic theory. And Einstein's theory predicts that there should be such a singular event. So all these things are the good news. The bad news is, from a quantum point of view, of course, the universe must be a possibility until consciousness looks at it. So this question is very interesting, and to make a long story short, there is now a principle called the anthropic principle, which is again based on some very absolutely amazing coincidences. So what transpires then is that the universe is built in such a way to make such a sentient observer possible, and when the sentience comes about, then only the whole universe going backward in time becomes manifest. Now you said that what the heck the Big Bang is doing, and now imagine that the Big Bang is not even there in a chronological sense that we are used to think. Big Bang is there, but only when a conscious observer looks at the possibilities, collapses the possibilities into actual events, and then going backward in time, all this stuff, the solar system, galaxies, supernovae, Big Bang, all that happens, but only going backward in time from the event of that first observation.
Do we as non-physicists make a mistake when we think about reality in a physical sense? In most cases, we think about physical things.
Yes, unfortunately, we do. We become used to thinking of the physical things as outside world, being there permanently. We don't think that they exist in possibility. This is the common mistake we make, because the physicist, the physical is external to us. And it seems that nothing we do affects the physical. Because of that, we think that the physical is there permanently without our having to look at it. But quantum physics is saying that in truth, it cannot be that way, because the mathematics of quantum physics, and there is no need to doubt them, because they are verified to such absolute order of accuracy that nobody doubts the veracity of quantum mathematics. So this mathematical theory is telling us in no uncertain terms that the world must be possibility until consciousness looks at it. So this is a camouflage, that the world appears so permanent, appears so solid, appears so independent of our looking. But the truth is that it comes moment to moment into appearance, into manifestation, only when we look.
Is it safe to assume that the rules of physics and the rules of the universe are the same all over the place?
Yes. It is safe to assume, because we look at the universe backward in time. We look at past events. When we are looking at another galaxy, we are looking at distant times. And it seems that the properties of these galaxies or these very distant stars we can understand using the same laws of physics and the same parameters that are involved with the laws. So our belief is that we have verified that the physical laws are not dependent on space and time. They remain the same over time, and they are the same across space.
When we think of a divine creator, we think that all of this had a beginning from nothing, which is also very difficult to understand because I can't comprehend what nothing is. But when we think about this, that a divine creator or something jump-started everything that we believe in, whether it's just this universe or the multiverses, then the question has always come, what started the divine creator? How did that?
Who created the creator, right?
Yeah, who created the creator? It's like the chicken and the egg, right?
Yes, sort of. But quantum physics has a very beautiful answer to that. See, this is where consciousness is the ground of being, and consciousness and its possibilities being the basis of everything helps us to understand, helps us to solve this complete riddle that, what is before anything that you can think of before the Big Bang or before the Creator, as you're putting it very beautifully. But in quantum physics, consciousness and its possibilities is the eternal beginning. It's the beginning forever, because if you include all possibilities in consciousness, think about it, past, present, future, every possibility is already included. Therefore, that's a timeless reality. Reality that contains all possibilities that ever was or ever will be. That's a timeless reality. So in that reality, nothing can ever happen. And the reality as we see it, as we experience it, is manifesting from that reality moment to moment in stages where there is some forgetfulness, there is some limitations that is imposed on this everything goes consciousness. Only with those limitations, eventually a manifestation becomes possible. And then universe truly can begin. Because whatever has some beginning will have to have an end. So the idea is that reality, ultimate reality, is timeless. It has no beginning and no end.
I assume because, your father was a Hindu guru, that you were raised a Hindu, which means you have got to have a profound belief in life after death. Is that a pretty good assumption on my part?
Well, yes, partly. I mean, as a Hindu, I should have that assumption. But remember, I told you I was a materialist first.
Yes.
And so what happened was that my father's teachings, they were pretty compelling for a while, but I rebelled, probably because of overdose of this teaching, and became a materialist at the age of 14. And after that, I never believed in reincarnation until I discovered this new way of thinking about science and physics, quantum measurement theory and consciousness. And then after my book, The Self-Aware Universe, was published in 1993, in 1994, a strange thing happened. A gentleman, a theosophist, started coming to my office and preached to me about theosophy, which is based on this idea. One of the ideas of theosophy is reincarnation.
Yes.
And of course, how does a physicist find an explanation of reincarnation? So my initial thought was that I can do this, but then a series of coincidences ending up in a dream. One morning, I should say, I was dreaming. I was just hearing a voice, and the voice became clearer and clearer. And when I woke up, I heard the clear admonition. And the admonition was, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is correct. It's your job to prove it. Now, Tibetan Book of the Dead is about this, what happens after we die. It's about the journey of the soul through bardos, openings, until it's reincarnated. So after that dream, I realized that, no, I have to take this very seriously. And I did, and as a result, much insights followed, and I have a theory of reincarnation, which I published in a book called Physics of the Soul.
Tell me about that. That's fascinating.
Well, it is. It is. The thing that we often don't understand or don't even think about is that, we think that everything that happens in our life, everything that we learn, all of that is stored in our brain. But when we posit that mind, the meaning giver of our life, that's what mind is. Thoughts have a component that matter can never process. Matter can only represent it. So does the brain make the memory of everything that happens in our mind? It turns out that it does. For the content of what happens in our lives, for example, you were born in so-and-so place, you were born in with so-and-so parents, those are contents. So those contents are all in our brain. Those are recorded in our brain. We all remember my father's name was this. That's history. But there is another aspect of our life that is never recorded in the brain. That aspect is what we learn, the propensities, the characters, the habit patterns that we pick up in our life experiences. You have a particular way of thinking which enables you to be this great radio personality. That's you. I have a character which enables me to be a generalizer. That's me. Other people are mathematician, musician, architect. So all these people are born with a character of being the personality that he or she is. That specialty, that character, is something that is not recorded in the brain. So where is it recorded? It turns out when you do quantum physics properly, you find that it's recorded nowhere. It's recorded outside of space and time. In other words, that same word, non-locality. Yeah. It's recorded non-locally. It's non-local memory. It's memory that is outside of space and time and therefore remains there even when the physical body dies. That's the survival after death. So how about
it's like it's put on a chip and you can carry it any place you want.
Any place you want because it's traveling outside of space and time. Wonderful analogy. So in a future time, if somebody reaches out to that ship outside of space and time, then he or she is inheriting my character. And so isn't it fair to say that that's my reincarnation? So reincarnational memory is fundamentally this memory of this character, the pattern of habit. And it's so obvious because, if you look at any baby, I'm sure you have looked at quite a few, and you find them to be so intelligent. The materialist model is that the baby comes with an empty brain and everything the baby has to learn. I mean, the genes are something, of course, that is one theory, that genes give us everything. But that theory is so absurd. Genes alone, genes are just instructions to make proteins, not much more than that. So the other theory is that environment teaches them everything. But what if there is no environment at all to teach somebody about something that they end up to be very good at, like Ramanujan, an Indian mathematician. He had no mathematician in his family. And yet this fellow, when he was a teenager, he was solving mathematical problems that absolutely boggles the mind of even geniuses. So how did he pick up this ability of doing mathematics at an early age? Or how did Mozart write entire symphonies at the age of 6? These are mysteries that you cannot solve without invoking the reincarnational idea. So Mozart was born with the genius of the musician. That's what I'm trying to say. Why did he get it? He got it from non-local memory in a past life.
Absolutely, tapping into someone, something in a past life. You know, when you go to sleep, and assuming you don't wake up remembering your dream, you go from point A to point B, 6 or 8 hours of sleep, however long you did sleep, and you remember nothing. You know nothing, and I used to think, Doctor, is this what death is? You go to sleep and that's it. But I don't think that's the case anymore.
No.
I truly believe, if you believe in consciousness like you do and I do, there's more out there than what we think.
No question about it. More out there, and we can prove it, and the proof is already here. This is why I often say that scientific evidence for the existence of God is already here. So what are you doing about it? So we have to do something, because God must mean something to us. So what the spiritual traditions say, their idea is that since there is God, therefore be good, do good. So I think we should listen to that a little bit. We should practice, we should bring back these virtues in our life.
Sure.
We have become too much of a materialist today, and some of our problems, global warming, terrorism, economic meltdown, all of this in a bulk is due to the worldview. We are looking the world with wrong conceptual lens. This got to change.
At what age did you realize your father was correct?
That is a very good question. That story I told you about, that why do I live this way, that was at age 37. Then the next realization was that consciousness is the ground of being. Now, that happened at the age of 49. So
it took you 30, 40 years to realize that.
It took me a long time.
But
I am a very dense person in some ways. My beliefs become so strong in me, and then to overcome them, I have to work so hard. What can I say? There is.
I want to talk with you about the multiverses when we come back.
Sure.
Our very special guest tonight, Dr. Amit Goswami, his website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. There are two. One is, and I'm going to spell his name for you, AmitGoswami.org, and then quantumactivist.com. That's another website tied into the documentary that he's featured in. I'll be back in a moment with Dr. Amit Goswami on Coast to Coast AM. Here for a few weeks, then it's off to Chicago, emceeing the National Radio Hall of Fame, and then off to Albuquerque with an event at KKOB, our huge affiliate there in Albuquerque, New Mexico, of which you're invited if you're out in that area. We're going to have shows, live shows, by the way, in Chicago at WLS, and also originating from KKOB in Albuquerque. And then it's back to L.A. for a little bit, and then the holiday schedule all over the place. However, we will have, and I will be on the air for you on Thanksgiving night. We'll have a live program there. Christmas Eve, Christmas night, live programs as well. Program directors, make note of that. And then the following week after that, it's vacation time, and we'll have a full schedule for you there of people who will be hosting the show, including, I believe, Art Bell will be doing his predictions program. I'm pretty sure. I'll have more of that for you in about a month or so. Up next, Dr. Amit Goswami, as we continue talking about incredible things going on, not only in this universe, but maybe another universe on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie with Dr. Amit Goswami with us tonight on Coast to Coast. Doctor, the multiverse theory seems to be cropping up a lot these days. 20, 30 years ago, if physicists talked about other universes, they probably would have gotten chased off the stage, wouldn't they?
Well, it started with a theory of quantum physics itself called many worlds theory. That was the first parallel universe theory that came about, and that was in the 1950s. But still, before then, nobody would think about it because the idea is quite clear. No, because universe is unique. I mean, if there is a parallel universe, it doesn't make any sense because, by definition, we would not know about it. We would have nothing to do with it. It would be completely theoretical because we could never experimentally verify it. So it's pointless. But now the multiverse theories are coming about because, the materialists are positing it because, you see, I mentioned that anthropic principle earlier. Mm-hmm. That principle says that this universe have some uncanny characteristics. that cannot be explained without this hypothesis that the universe is designed in a very fine-tuned condition so that life can originate in this universe. So these very special conditions, and scientists don't like fine-tuning because fine-tuning suggests a fine-tuner. Somebody designed the universe. And they don't like this design idea, as you know, intelligent design versus, theories of evolution. So that is the principal motivation. If we have multiple universes, then what happens is that there are so many universes, you can easily imagine that, okay, one of them may be fine-tuned just as an accident. Chance made it so fine-tuned. Yeah. And we just happen to live in such a fine-tuned universe, but don't put any special meaning into it because, after all, there are so many universes that one of them can very easily be a little bit special looking. That's the idea. But again, the original criticism stands. Today we have these scientists constantly talk about pseudoscience when they criticize paranormal researchers or people having ideas like, is there extraterrestrial beings, and that they call them pseudoscientific ideas. But science, as Galileo defined it, and as I have pursued it, and many, many people, and most people, I must say, pursue it, science is a combination. It's a two-pronged way of verifying truth. It's a combination of theory and experimental data. If you posit a theory that can never be verified, we should not call it science. So this kind of idea, multiverse, although they are suggested seriously by serious scientists, but they are truly mind games because they are not science because you can never verify the idea. Without verification, every scientist should be take their ideas tongue-in-cheek. I mean, it's not really science, it's pseudoscience. But there are multiverses which we can verify. These multiverses are multiverses within consciousness. For example, we have the material universe, which we sense. We look at the material universe through our sensory organs. Then there is the mental universe, which we think. And then there is the vital energy universe, which we feel. And there is even the universe of archetypes, which we intuit. These are the real multiverses, and these are verifiable because I can verify that I have thought. I can directly experience it. We can compare experiences with each other. We can even study the characteristic of thought in the laboratory. So a lot can be done here experimentally. This is a real scientific idea of multiverse.
And these multiverses, if they exist in the form or fashion that some people are speculating, are they connected like bubbles would if you were blowing bubbles out of a little bubble machine?
No, see, they cannot connect because the connection would then couple the universes. So those material universes can never couple with each other because then they would be just considered one universe. They can interact.
Good point.
A universe, by definition, cannot interact with another universe.
What would then be between this is where my physical brain is again. What would be between the space between the two universes? Well,
there is no need for assuming that there is any space because the whole concept of space is space within a universe. It does not make any sense to think of space outside of a universe. You cannot even define really, truthfully, outside of a universe without a discontinuity. Something outside the universe can only be discontinuously outside. If it's continuously outside, then why not include it within the universe that we have? So you cannot really think of space connecting to universes.
I'm trying to imagine what multiverses would look like. Not connected, but and I just can't.
No, you can't. And this is why I call it pseudoscience, because you cannot not only think about it, you cannot devise any experiment to verify the existence of these multiverses. It's just a meaningless theory put together as a red herring so that we don't put much importance to this anthropic principle, which shows that there is a designer, because without a designer, how can we believe so much of fine-tuning coming about in our universe?
If you were teaching a physics class and you had two students sitting in there, and one said, Dr. Goswami, explain why things happen for me. I'm a positive person. I feel like I have a lot of energy. I meditate once in a while. I'm able to concentrate on things, and they happen. whether it's a job or relationship. These things seem to happen for me. And then the other person says, well, Dr. Goswami, explain to me why nothing happens for me. I'm negative. I'm down about everything. I don't accept things. I'm not a happy person. What would you, in terms of physics, if this is physics, what would you tell these two?
You know, your question reminded me of a story that I read about Victor Hugo, the famous novelist who gave us Les Miserables, that famous story about the hunchback. So, the story goes, when Victor Hugo was a child, one day he and another child were sent out on a walk, and when they came back, the questioner asked, what did you see? To the other child. And this other child said, oh, nothing much, just as like any other teenager would probably say the same thing today. Their attention span is so small. But Victor, on the other hand, said, oh, so much I saw, I can't possibly think of describing it, but let me try. And he went on and on and on and on, describing all the various things, the splendor of wonder of nature that he saw. So, this is the thing. The optimist, the positive outlooker, is creative, always finding things to create, always have curiosity about the world. So what causes this and what causes that? And so always takes things in a positive way. So things happen because that's the way he's looking at the world. He's seeing meaning in the world where it is full of meaning. Negative person, on the other hand, is pessimistic, does not have any idea that there is any meaning. So always trying to find that lack of meaning, disengaged. And that disengagement means only one thing. Nothing will ever happen to this fellow because things happen, of course, but things pass him by. He's just an onlooker without any interest in anything that happens. And without that interest, we don't see meaning in the world. So, coming back to our main discussion, materialist versus consciousness fanciers, that is the fundamental difference. Materialists fundamentally are very pessimistic people. They refuse to see meaning in their life, refuse to see meaning in the world, refuse to see value in the world, and therefore they believe in a philosophy that takes away meaning and value from us. Whereas as optimists and idealist people, we believe in ideas, we believe that the world has plenty of meaning, and therefore things are constantly happening, and we are delighted explaining what is happening. This is the real fundamental difference, and it is a difference of outlook.
Does that also explain some people's ability to do healing? They are somehow tapping into something that is giving them this incredible ability to either touch people and heal them or to use energy to heal them. But it seems to be working for people.
Yeah, because the point is that there is this vital energy world. And some people can tap into it because as you become a connoisseur of consciousness, you begin to see that we are more than just our material body. We have a vital body that we feel, and it is these vital energies that is coupling of this vital energy with the physical organs. That is what gives us vitality. When that vitality goes away, when the coupling is not so good, when we are not coupled with this vital energy so much, then is when we fall sick. So somebody who can give us an influx of vitality from his or her own access to this world, those are the healers. So we have hands-on healing, we have Reiki healing, we have healings by Qigong, that's a Chinese practice. Sometimes we use a little bit of matter. For example, in acupuncture, a little puncture is made in the skin with a sharp needle. So that's a little bit of interference. But of course, such a little bit, why such a little bit interference can do such a big bit of healing, that is the mystery. And that mystery is solved, again, by bringing in this concept of vital energy, vitality.
The Quantum Activists, your new documentary film. Let's talk a little bit about that. And it's based a lot on some of the things we've talked about. But tell me how you've structured it.
First of all, let me introduce my friends who did this movie, Reese Stewart and Renee Slade, two very talented people who just, they invited me to give a workshop at a small town in Oregon coast called Yahats. And they surprised me because this was being, they were taping it, they said, and there was no idea of making any movie at that time. But what happened was that the content must have just was flow from me. I, of course, enjoyed it enormously, but I never do these things in a prepared kind of way. It just happened. And they liked it, so they thought that they have the beginnings of making a documentary. But, of course, they immediately realized that the recording was not so good. And so they, in the subsequent 2 years, they recorded many more talks. They collected some 200 hours of
That's
tape.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it's really their creativity. They chose how the sequences would work. You know, I gave a lot of talks at a lot of places around the university, in my office. In that conference, I gave a second conference a couple of years after the first one. And from all this, they, with their tremendous genius, collected the various pieces together and made it into a gestalt that shows what we are talking about so beautifully. You know, I went to the opening of this movie. It was released last month, August 25th in Seattle. And I saw the movie for the first time. I saw a preliminary version 6 months or so ago, but that was very preliminary. I didn't see the finished version until that night on the opening night. And I was inspired. I mean, it seems funny to be inspired by your own image speaking of things on
It is. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. But I must say I was inspired. I mean, they did a good job in presenting in this very world, you know, with so many problems that we have, presenting the real idea of a world of consciousness in which all things are towards the good. It's evolving towards making a human society in which we will all live in tremendous harmony and peace and love, and how we can evolve towards that, you know. First of all, we have to change the worldview. And second of all, we have to become creative. Third of all, we have to start loving each other and develop positive emotions instead of all this negativity that we are talking about. And it goes on and on. So these are real problems. But these two geniuses, they made the movie in such a way with such a collage of beautiful music and beautiful pictures that go with what is being said and make it into such a coherent collage of ideas that I think that's what inspires people who watch it.
You know, I agree with that, too, and I think we need to take a first step to begin to change our direction this way. There is a factor out there, Doctor, I haven't been able to wrestle with yet on how we deal with it, and that's the greed factor of some of the elitists and the leaders in governments around this planet that take advantage of so many people. And to me, they are the stumbling block in getting things done.
There are some of the stumbling blocks, yes. But we have a recipe. We have a new economics that we are developing based on the primacy of consciousness. I call it spiritual economics. And I tell you this, that this current economics, which is not really Adam Smith's economics, you know, this is very poorly publicized. I mean, I am amazed. You know, economics has so much deviated now from what Adam Smith discovered and what is called capitalism. We cannot call what is going on by the name of economics capitalism in the Adam Smith sense now. It has ideas which are completely materialist ideas. That has nothing, you know, Adam Smith's time, we were not materialists, we were modernists. We valued both mind and matter. And it shows. Adam Smith would never allow greed in the equation for economics. Adam Smith would never allow speculation of money being the major part of what goes on as economic investment. You know, today the real economy, what Adam Smith thought of, you know, this production consumption economy, that's a small part of the economy. The rest of it is just investment bankers play games with money like a casino. And that's what got us into this trouble of these toxic assets. And they're already thinking of putting out similar toxic assets, because the regulation is just not, I know the Obama government is trying, but I don't think they will succeed in making regulations. The lobbies are too strong, the Congress is too weak, and what have you.
Yep. You've hit it right on the head. You're absolutely right. It's also amazing that your field, physics, kind of intertwines throughout all of this, isn't it?
Yes, of course, because physics is, as you know, the basis of all things. And now consciousness plus physics, consciousness is the basis of all things, and then physics is the basic science of all things. So the two together, consciousness plus quantum, is giving us such a handle on how to think about reality that if we are able to make these changes in worldview, and I think that it's a must, because consciousness, all is evolution of consciousness. So eventually the movement of consciousness will remove this blemish called materialism, and we will get back to right track, and the right track will find solutions for these problems.
Do you wake up every day, Dr. Goswami, and say, I love what I do? I love this job. Yeah.
Is there any other way to live?
No.
Joseph Campbell had this beautiful phrase, follow your bliss. And I think you and I both are following our bliss.
Absolutely. You? Stay with us. We're going to come back in just a moment and talk about something we haven't talked about yet, and that's gravity, how that fits into the equation. And then we'll talk more about consciousness right here on Coast to Coast AM. Then later on, final hour with Dr. Goswami. We'll take your phone calls. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Well, next hour, we'll take your phone calls with Dr. Goswami. We'll be back in a moment. We'll talk with him about gravity on Coast to Coast AM. In the mix of things in the universe, Dr. Goswami, how important is gravity?
Holds it all together. So it is very important. Without gravity, the large-scale structure of the universe cannot be explained. So gravity is basic. At the same time, gravity plays a rather insignificant role in the way that our own physical body, living beings are made. So in that sense, gravity is important, of course. We have certain gravity effects on the way we live on Earth compared to, for example, if there was a weightless environment like in a spaceship. So it's not that gravity does not play any role whatsoever. But main role of physical bodies that we have is played by the electromagnetic forces rather than gravity.
And with gravity, of course, does that continue the rules of the universe?
Yes, the large-scale structure, all the laws of the large-scale structure of the universe, how the universe expands, how long the expansion will go on, all that is gravity, play of gravity. And maybe recently some physicists are making noises about some other universal repulsion, for example, playing a role also. But gravity is the acknowledged major role in that particular aspect of physics.
Dark matter.
Dark matter may be a concern, but it's borderline physics because again, the idea of dark matter is extremely difficult to verify. It's a speculation, and the experimental empirical data that people collect is also based on our models. So it's very possible that in the future we'll have a better model. And then the notions of dark matter that we have today will have to be modified. So it's the models, the difficulty is that the models have many parameters. With that many parameters, there are so many ways of fitting the data. Let's face it. I mean, the data is just not numerous enough, and we have no control over the data. We cannot do these experiments in the laboratory. So it's very difficult to make scientific sense out of the vast, all the theories that are coming out in this respect. So I'm a little skeptical about all the different claims. I think partially it's just a maze of ideas that the materialists play with, and we should not we should not take them too seriously, principally because they're borderline pseudoscience, because experimental verification is impossible.
And talking about laboratory work, tell me the folks at CERN aren't going to create black holes and destroy us.
Well, that was a very, very speculative theory, which has absolutely not an iota of experimental verification behind it. It's just used to excite us. But there were some real good physics, too, that the CERN accelerator was built for. I'm not saying that all of the work that was planned with it is nonsense. Some of it made very much sense. There are some good ideas there, but black hole is not one of them. This black hole specs, this is an extremely speculative idea.
As they search for this God particle, two physicists.
That makes sense. That makes sense because there is this grand unification that people are positing. That is a very interesting idea, and only part of it can be verified. But this other part, these so-called Higgs bosons, they have not been found yet. And the whole theory depends on this Higgs boson in a major way. So if the Higgs bosons are not found, then this theory falls apart. But even this idea will never be verifiable enough for us to conclude that Higgs boson does not exist. People will always say, well, we have not dealt with high enough energy. And so how high an energy can you go? We are limited by the energies available for a machine on Earth, and we can only go so high in energy. That energy may not be enough to verify the existence of Higgs boson. So we are in physics, this high-energy physics, we are approaching very borderline scenario for a legitimate science. More and more it seems that ideas are given to us which are not really verifiable, like string theory is a good example of it, dark matter, another good example of it. These ideas cannot be verified in the laboratory. So on the whole, I think it is much better not to take these ideas very seriously, not to spend too much money on it. People can speculate all they wish. We have free speech, so I'm not saying that we should curb people's thinking, let them think any which way they like. But in the meantime, we have very important problems to solve: global warming, terrorism, economic meltdown, spiritual economics, healthcare. Consciousness physics has much to tell you about how to take care of healthcare, much better than the materialist medicine of allopathy. So these are the things that I would pay much more attention. Even a fraction of money that is spent today for making these high-energy accelerators, if that came to the research on the new science, I think we would have major breakthrough. We could establish the existence of God beyond any reasonable doubt with just a 10-year program with a fraction of the money that was spent on the CERN accelerator.
That's a good point. And it seems like you're trying to use physics to solve many of the ills of this world, and I like that.
Thank you. I appreciate your saying that.
Are you getting support now from other physicists or other people in academia?
There are a lot of physicists who give support, and what is very interesting is that when physicists retire from their departments, then very often they start supporting these kind of ideas. But, while they're inside the university system, inside the academe, the ideas such as God still are complete pariah. Anybody who utters the G word becomes a pariah as a result. So it is very difficult somebody said, one journalist, I think, said several years ago that the G word, the concept of God, remained the last remaining obstacle for academia to handle. They just cannot handle it. They fall apart. If you, in the academia, you mention that you want to take this idea seriously, the God hypothesis, they just cannot handle it.
Getting back to CERN for a moment, a couple physicists working there said last week that they believe that God is going to interfere with its ability to succeed. I found that to be an incredible story.
That's very interesting. You have to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, they actually believe that something's happening with time travel, and they're coming back into time to screw up the machine so it won't find the God's part of it. Which brings up this question, Joe. Do you think in the future, actual time travel will be possible. Our ability to go into the future or to go back into the past to see events.
Well, not any more than what we already do. I mean, these multiverses exist in the form of our mind and vital body and intuition and all that. And within those multiverses, we have already some time travel in the sense that we can recognize experiences from the future. We can sometimes people foresee some event that actually took place. For example, there is very good evidence that people recognize the death of Robert Kennedy. So this kind of phenomena already has some evidence in their favor. On the other hand, real-time travel violates completely the nature of time in several scores. First of all, Einstein's theory of relativity that has a kind of time travel, but it's a one-way time travel. You can travel to the future according to relativity, but you cannot travel to the past. And traveling to the past is impossible also because the nature of time has this one-way arrow built into it. Time flows from the past into the present to the future. Mm-hmm. It's not the other way around, because other way around would assume that all the universes lie there already somehow, and then we can jump from one universe to the other at a different time. But that picture is not the way the universe is in consciousness, because the universe is being created moment to moment from possibilities becoming actuality. It's not at all like universes can be there as a series of actual stations from which and to which we can travel.
If you were living, let's say, in the year 1600, would you have been able to envision what we're doing today in terms of science and technology? We've been to the moon. We send probes out of the solar system. During the 1600s, do you think...
it would have been very, very tough. The reason is that in 1600s, we were just getting into the basics of science, and we were struggling to come out of the grip of religion, Christianity at that time. And therefore, most scientists of that era were very careful to not to think that God is in the realm of science. I mean, they would not possibly think that God could be ever scientifically explained. They left God very separate. God and mind is the domain of religion, and science only deals with matter. That's the way that the Cartesian divide was made, and scientists pretty much went along with the divide until the idea came that matter can explain everything. That happened in the 1950s. But before that, people respected that Cartesian divide. So no scientist in 1600 would ever think that it's possible to think scientifically of God and verify the idea of God within science.
Okay, because I'm leading up to this, and that is, had you lived during the 1600s, what would you be able to see about 2000? What is out there in the year 2500? What do you think 500 years from now?
We will be surprised, because our knowledge has, in the meantime, taken a quantum leap in the discovery of quantum physics. Because quantum physics is the final physics. It really seems that way, George. It's not somebody's imagination, because quantum physics is being verified with such uncanny accuracy that it is impossible to think that quantum physics will ever be replaced by another physics. And because we know the final physics that is with us, we know that these ideas we are proposing now, which we are verifying, like consciousness is the ground of being, there is downward causation, there is non-locality, there are similar ideas that verifies the idea of God and downward causation. Because we have good theory and good experiment, we can now predict a lot about how the universe will evolve, how we will evolve. Of course, the universe evolves very little in mere 500 years, so that's an irrelevant question. But how we evolve, that can be predicted. And my prediction, you want to hear my prediction of
Absolutely.
What happens in 500 years?
Yes.
I think within the next few centuries, the main thing that we will have is that our mind, the way our mind has been, stuck with rationality and disregarding emotions. So the first thing we will do is to integrate emotion and thinking. Have you been a fan of Star Trek?
I have been a fan of Star Trek. Bill Shatner comes on the program a lot, and Captain Kirk. I love Star Trek.
I was a Star Trek fan. And you remember this constant, incessant fight between Spock and McCoy about reason and emotion?
Exactly.
So that division has played long enough. We have divided like that since millennia. So now the time has come, finally, to end that feud and integrate them. And as we integrate them, we will be able to move beyond this pure rationality. That is, we dream of a pure rational world, but of course we can't because we have negative emotions and they're etched in our brain as brain circuits. We cannot rise above that. This dichotomic battle is being fought because we have ignored to develop positive emotional brain circuits. So once we are understanding this, and we now do, and we know that neurons are extremely plastic. So if we teach ourselves to have positive emotions, if we work these positive emotions out, what are they? It's the capacity to love, basically. Once we have that capacity, Teilhard de Chardin, a great Jesuit priest, said once that we have to learn, we will learn how to harness the energies of love. So that's basically my prediction, that we will learn how to harness the energies of love, we'll balance this negativity, we'll become overall positive, and then we'll jump from rationality to intuitive mind. Instead of reason-based mind, which is constant difficulty in accepting emotion, also difficulty in accepting intuition, it is a world by itself. We'll give up that kind of mind and get into a more intuitive mind, which will value these archetypes like love, beauty, justice, truth, and goodness.
Will we get there because we have to, or because we evolve into it?
Well, both. We are evolving towards it, but we never evolve until we are hit with a 2x4. We are very stubborn sons of bitches.
Right across the forehead. Bang. Yeah.
And this is the way it is. I mean, how many people can be creative just by mere curiosity? If you say gently that, okay, go and investigate, that's not motivation enough. But if you send a disease, then we are interested in healing ourselves. So materialism has been sent to us as a disease, and now we have these problems, global warming, terrorism, economic meltdowns, and what have you. Now we are thinking, okay, we must have another science. Oh, God, give us another science. Otherwise, we just cannot take this ills from materialism anymore. So this is what is changing our worldview, and it will succeed. It will take probably decades and maybe even a century or two. So in 500 centuries, 5 centuries, where will we be? We'll be at a very good place. We'll be more loving, more truthful. We'll appreciate beauty much more. And we certainly do not have to watch this inane violence on TV every day. That I can promise you.
And, some people who practice exactly what you say right now and don't have to wait for 500 years, they will be way ahead of the curve.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Way ahead. You've got a passion for what you do. What drives you, Doctor? What pushes you?
Well, this passion is, I think it partly comes from my reincarnational inheritance. It's a passion to know. It's a curiosity that drives all good science. Partly, of course, I must also confess that partly it comes from some suffering as well. I have had difficulties in terms of discovering the nature of love. I have had a couple of marriages that broke down, and I did not know how to love a woman. For a long time, I have lived this way, and finally, I'm just very recently, I'm beginning to understand and appreciate the nature of love myself in a personal way.
Okay.
So some suffering, personal suffering has been helpful. But mainly, as far as the intellectual and objective stuff goes, a tremendous curiosity. Much of it has been driven by that. But again, the beginning was suffering. When I first started changing, come to the new physics, the main reason I told you that story, why do I live this way, full of negative emotions, jealousy, competitiveness? I just didn't want to do science that way. I loved science, I always have, but I just didn't want to get into that base emotions in order to pursue what I wanted to pursue. I wanted to do happy physics. And with blessings of the divine, I have finally established a way of doing science, way of doing everything, in fact, in a very happy mood of mind. We can do it. We all can do it.
Instead of just the quantum activist, maybe we'll also call you then the happy physicist. What do you think?
Well, quantum activism is about happiness in life. If you become a quantum activist, your job is to transform yourself and the world in a happy frame of mind, to a negative to a positive frame of mind. That is the primary objective of quantum activism. So it summarizes it all. All I have to say, I'm a quantum activist. And immediately people will know that I pursue happiness, just as our founding fathers said. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what we are doing. Our founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson, in essence, knew about quantum physics. In essence. I mean, of course, they didn't know the formulas and equations, but they knew that pursuit of happiness will come to the recognition of something that we don't have yet. And they prepared us for an advancement in future centuries, and that is now upon us. And now, really, this is the American dream, I think.
Absolutely. Let's get that when we come back, and it'll be our final hour with you, Dr. Goswami. We'll take phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, this will be our final hour with Dr. Amit Goswami. We'll take your phone calls with him this hour right here on Coast to Coast AM. Dr. Goswami, if people want to see the documentary film The Quantum Activist, how can they see it? Where do they go?
Well, they go to right now. It is opening at various places. For example, in LA, a major market, it will open on the 11th of November. That's a big opening that is being planned, and there is openings in Phoenix, in Dallas-Fort Worth. In New York, it's opening in March, on March 21st, I think. So that's the first stage of how these movies are marketed, and when the public interest will build, then it will start being shown as a regular movie, hopefully sometime next year.
Super. And on the website, people can track, I would assume, where the different locations are.
Absolutely.
At quantumactivist.com. Great.
Yes.
Let's go